one of my favorite Italian cookies I hardly ever got to make because the base of them is almond paste. And almond paste is basically almond flour and sugar to create this rich paste out of which they make things like marzipan and whatever. But it's a ton of sugar and I really don't want to eat it. So one day I was playing around in the kitchen and I figured out how to make almond paste. And that's why I'm showing you these pine nut cookies today. So it's really simple. You take a half cup of almond flour. You take a half cup of whipped rice syrup. You can also use regular rice syrup, but I really like the whipped for this recipe. It's really gooey. Okay, so that goes into your bowl. A teaspoon of vanilla, just like this. And 2 tablespoons of water. If you say 1001 when you're pouring something, it's a tablespoon, roughly. Now we're just going to whip this into a creamy paste. And it takes on the texture of almond paste because basically it's almond paste. So once it's nice and creamy, just set your mixer aside. And then I like to just pull my almond paste to the center because now I'm going to measure the rest of my ingredients. This is a 1-bowl wonder. I'm going to take 8 tablespoons of vegan butter, whatever kind you like. And you can see I measure not particularly carefully. And it doesn't matter so much. It's like the more vegan butter you put, the more moist the cookies, but 7 to 8 tablespoons is perfect. A touch more vanilla. You can also use almond extract, but be careful with almond extract because it can turn the cookie bitter. So I tend to use more vanilla than I do almond. You want a pinch of salt to make them sweet. 6 tablespoons of coconut sugar, which is a low glycemic index sugar that is made from the sap of a coconut tree. And it tastes like brown sugar. And it's really yummy. And when you bake with it, it's a 1-to-1 substitution with regular sugar. That goes in, that goes in. We need a half teaspoon each baking soda and baking powder so the cookies rise. And then we need 1 cup of flour. I tend to use whole wheat pastry or whole wheat sprouted flour because they're a nice tender flour. And whole wheat sprouted flour is amazing because it digests in the body like a vegetable instead of like a carbohydrate. It's amazing. And it's a nice light end product. So in goes the flour. And then take your mixer on slow so you don't have flour everywhere. And you just whip this into a soft dough. When you get about 80% mixed, stop and add a half cup of pine nuts. Now usually pine nut cookies are rolled in the pine nuts, so the pine nuts are on the outside. But since there's no egg in these, since I don't use egg in my cooking, I've discovered I have to put the pine nuts in the cookie or they fall off in the oven. So I kind of want the pine nuts in the cookies since they're pine nut cookies. And listen, I know what you're going to say before you say it. Pine nuts are expensive. Can I use another nut? Yeah, of course you can. But then they're not pine nut cookies, are they? These are so special and so richly flavored that, trust me, you want to use pine nuts. So you're going to roll them into a little disc like this onto a baking sheet and flatten them. And you need to give them a little space. They are going to rise and get a little bigger. So I tend to use a smaller sheet and use a dozen. You want to put your rack in the middle oven so that the cookies bake evenly. And you just roll these into like walnut-sized spheres. Get 12 on the sheet. The pine nuts peek out. Okay, last 2 go on the tray. And then I'm going to take these to the oven. Okay. These cookies are going to bake at 350 for about 12 minutes. And trust me, once you've tasted them, it is the longest 12 minutes of your life. So let's wait. And wait. Okay, the cookies should be ready. And after 12 long minutes, you have these gorgeous cookies. And then you just place them onto a plate, and they're tender and cake-like and delicious and amazing. And you should let them cool before you eat them. But I don't know, instead, what are you waiting for? Let's get back to the cutting board, and I'll see you next time on Christina Cooks.